WNDRSOUL. Welcome everyone to another episode of the WNDRSOUL podcast. You might find that this episode runs a little bit different than previous episodes, just something I want to try. So let me know what you guys think. But this episode is featuring Kenny from Ghost Planet Studios. He does incredible content over on so many different platforms. You could probably find his Facebook page, the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and hopefully coming soon, some more YouTube content, stuff like that. So be sure to check out the links in the description of this episode if you like what you hear from me and Kenny. I've had Kenny on a handful of times. We've worked together. We've known each other now for a couple of years since starting to do content. I think we met before COVID, so probably about 2019 or so, 2018 at the earliest. But we have such a good time talking, and we ended up going over a ton of stuff. Man, we just kind of started like on one subject and just let it run. I told him before we even hit record, I said, man, just trust me. Let's just run it like like we normally would. And I feel like this is probably one of the most organic conversations we've had on the podcast. So I hope you guys like that. That's something I really hope that we can continue to present here at WNDRSOUL with different guests and just different topics and stuff like that. Just a few announcements before we get into this episode featuring Ghost Planet Studios. Going to be focusing a lot more on the podcast and the YouTube channel going into 2024. I've made some exciting changes in my personal life that are going to free up some energy and time, and I am excited about some projects and some, I guess, format and consistency goals that I have for the podcast, and even some individual content that I want to present on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed to the WNDRSOUL YouTube channel, be sure to do that. And I'm always open to feedback, but I have a couple ideas about what I would like to give to you guys in the new year. If this is the last episode of 2023, I just want to say thank you guys for all of your support this year. Getting back on track, supporting Wonder Sports, and I'll have some announcements about that going into the new year. Me and Grant are going to sit down and talk about what we want to do. We got to catch up on some things too, so I think y'all will hear something else fairly soon from Wonder Sports. But yeah, I just want to say thank you guys, and I hope you guys have a great holiday season. And I'm going to try to work on some content for the rest of December at the time of this recording. And but, I'm going to sit back and enjoy this break and hit the ground running in 2024. So with all that being said, thank you guys for checking out this episode of WNDRSOUL. This is Kenny Mason and me. Enjoy. I don't know about yours.
All right. Mine's always been, I mean, you've heard the last...
that surprised me a little bit, man.
What did
that the pumpkin spice, the punk?
Did it really?
Yeah. No, totally, man. Because I mean, it's funny. Me and my girlfriend, like, we both joked that she's an elder emo. She liked My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, Panic at the. Those are very generic ones. She'll probably get upset that I only picked like the most popular ones, but pop punk and stuff like that. And she kind of brought me back to listening to it because that's what I loved, man, growing up. So, but listening to some of that music you picked for that episode, I was like, hey, man, I did not know Kenny got down like this, man.
I get down like that.
What got you into that kind of music, though?
Oh, my God. Like when I was, it started, honestly, there was a girl I almost said her name. See, these are the moments. I almost said her name out loud. But anyway, I was dating a girl in high school. I was a freshman in high school, and she really liked Panic at the Disco. I had no idea who that was, but I knew that one song they had, Right Sins Not Tragedies.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was coming on like MTV Wake Up every morning because I'd gotten suspended from school around then. And so I was like, I'm going to make her. I'm going to go into LimeWire and I'm going to get as many Panic songs as I can find, and I'm going to put them on a CD, and it's going to be my love CD. It's going to be great. Wow. It's going to be all her Panic songs. We broke up before I could give it to her, and out of spite, I said, I'm going to listen to this myself. and I'm gonna like these songs for me. And by the time I was like 5 or 6 down, I was like, okay, hold up, wait a minute. Damn. These song titles are long as shit. Why is every title like I know these tables are numbered, honey. There's a good reason. You just haven't thought of it yet. What is that? And like it just pulled me into this new world of music where like uh a lot of it was so cool because it was really over the top. It was very emo, but it was so melodic and some of the lyrics were so abstract and strange. And once you get on that train in those early 2000s, you just start going. Like you can get on with Fall Out Boy, you can get on with Panic, but once you're there, they all kind of lead you to one another. So I started listening to Panic, and it really wasn't long before I was like, Fall Out Boy, that's pretty. That sounds that sounds pretty good. What was that, Under the Cork Tree? I kind of like that. And it moved to there. And just like I said on my show, I was playing like NCAA football and things like that. And all of those do have like Green Day and like American Idiot and songs like that. And you're flipping through those menus and you just get used to it. Like out of high school, university, out of college, what I really want to see. Like you get used to these songs and you learn the lyrics every time you come out of a game. And before long, I was like looking them up myself. I had them on my iPod. I actually remember my cousin who I was really tight with back in high school. I let one of his friends hold my iPod for a period, and when he gave it back, I didn't think anything of it. My cousin later was like, "Yeah, E was listening to your iPod earlier. You said you listen to weird shit, man." Like, it's because it's because it was full of like it was this eclectic mix of like Lil Wayne, Green Day, like Weezer, and like all of this shit, dude. Smashing Pumpkins, and like Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco. Um, it was all over the place, and I actually started like a rock and roll club at my high school. There's a whole thing, man. I had a whole arc.
So it got deep, dude. This
It got
is
deep, like Into the Spider Verse, the
yeah,
second one
yeah.
with Hobie Brown.
Hmm.
I swear to God, man, I was living Hobie Brown's truth before where he was walking on that screen.
Man, dude, that's
I
so
had, I had a
fun,
whole
man.
art.
Have you ever been to a show or anything? You ever been to Warp
Plenty.
Tour or anything like that?
I've been to Warp Tour. Would love to go to Warp Tour.
I wish I
I
would have
had a
went.
Yeah, I would love to go to Coachella, even though that's more of like a pop thing, pop rap
Hmm.
thing at this point. I would still have to go. More than anything else, I would love to. I had virtual tickets for Outcast Reunion. That's a different genre, but I wish I could have gone to that. I had to work, but I
Oh.
got the virtual tickets and was streaming it from the bathroom. Um, and I'd really love to go to Camp Flog Gnaw. I don't know
What's
if you know
that?
what that.
Oh, what's
That's
that?
that's Tyler the Creator's music festival.
What?
And
Okay.
I've really come around. I mean, I've actually reviewed Tyler quite a bit on Ghost Planet.
Hmm.
I think I reviewed maybe 3 of his albums now in one way or another. And I think musically, he's really growing into like the next Pharrell Williams, you know? Like I really, really, really do think that. Like he has come so far, and sonically what he is doing is so much like what Pharrell was breaking ground with in like 2003, 2004. And those are years I was paying close attention to that.
Hmm.
Um, so I would love to go to it because there's always a really cool, really varied mix of people at Camp Flog Gnaw. Like you'll get like Billie Eilish, and you'll also get like Travis Scott, or like Young Thug will show up, ASAP Rocky will show up. But you'll get people from all over. I think Kurt Cobain randomly showed up one year.
What?
It's a really weird mix. But what I used to love to do was go to a lot of local shows. And I can't really say where local is, obviously, but I used to love going to like see like kind of quote unquote underground acts.
Yeah.
Like I remember a show I went to on New Year's in like 2018 where I finally saw a guy in person play with his teeth, and it was the coolest shit, man.
What?
I was like, is he really gonna oh and like he was literally shredding with his teeth. I have pictures of it. I was like, it was so cool, man. It was badass, and it was in just this little dive bar that I had found a couple cities over, and I went with a couple friends. But yeah, dude, I'm telling you, I had a whole arc. I had a whole arc, man.
So,
I'm all over the place musically.
well, like, what made you want to do like a punk centric episode? Like, was it just a time of year? Was it just like, I don't know, like maybe you were just in the mood, you were listening to some music like that, and you're like, this would be really cool to just kind of pay homage to some of the stuff that I've always liked, and maybe I've never really shared with people this side of me before.
It's a bit of everything actually. It was a very calculated move. I kind of can't play it off all cool and aloof like, oh, I just did it, man. It's like, no, I actually thought a lot about it. It was a lot of things converging into one.
Mm-hmm.
It was the positive reaction to the music in the first episode, which was very folk heavy. Um, because it was the Halloween season, I had a lot of directions I could go because I do license out the music, so I'm paying for the rights to use it. And once you're doing that, it really opens up what types of music you can use for different things. So I could have went anywhere with it. And that first episode, I went pretty folksy because of the Halloween season. I thought that would be neat. I'd kind of played with that on a previous incarnation of a podcast that goes. It's also out on Ghost Planet somewhere, but I played with the sound before, and once the folk thing went over really well, I was like, okay, I think these episodes can kind of have musical themes that tie them together. Like I think one episode can have one genre of music, one episode can have another, as long as they're sort of loosely connected in one way or the other. So with punk, it became, and I'm not kidding, it's like six or seven different things all led into the decision. One was I was going to be talking about CM Punk from WWE returning to WWE. So CM Punk, that's where the punk came from. Two, it was the fall season. And I was going to be talking about fall topics. Like I briefly mentioned like beers I like and sports games I used to play and how fall season is synonymous with football season to me, obviously. Letterman jackets, like leaves on the ground, that type of thing. And all that converged into, okay, pumpkin spice, well, punk and spice. And then it was a double entendre because I'll be talking about CM Punk, so the music can be punk and there'll be some spice because I know a little later on in the show I'm gonna get a little spicy with Akira Toriyama and kind of take him to task a bit for Dragon Ball Daima, which, regardless of the positive reception that announcement has had online from a lot of people, I feel like no one asked for that, and it's getting a little indefensible what Dragon Ball has sort of become. So I knew there was going to be some controversial spiciness. So it all kind of converged together with the music, the topic, and the time of the year. I was like, punk and spice is perfect. And once that was decided, the music was decided to be punk. And then I just went all in. And I spent days and days kind of sorting out the right songs to fit the mood of, like I said, those nights playing like EA Sports games and that time in my life because those were the years and I was listening to that CD for my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend, and I got into all that music, so it all tied together, man.
Yeah, man, I was about to ask you, and I was just taking a note on my phone because I do want to talk about Dragon Ball with you a little bit, at least referencing to like the new series and stuff. But so sometimes I have to like write things down as we're like talking just to go, hey, man, gotta remember to bring that up. But
Right.
um, when you're talking about music, though, man, um, no, I think we're both fans of like all kinds of music, all different genres and stuff like that. But I was just kind of curious as listening to you and how you were influenced by like just different artists, but also you said like playing video games and the music coming from some of these sports games and stuff like that. Because Madden did pretty good with rock for a while there. I don't think they do much now. I think a lot of things now are very hip hop's like focus and I don't think they
Yeah.
would do pop. Well, like I don't know, man. Maybe I'm the last Madden I played was like mostly just hip hop,
No,
which
no,
was
you're right. You're
yeah,
100% right. But that's the way the culture is going.
yeah,
I
I,
actually wanted to speak about this at some point too, and it's that, when we were in our teen years, punk was I think a lot closer to one of the more popular genres of the day. It was everywhere, is what I wanted to say. Punk was everywhere. You could get up in the morning on MTV and you could see punk music,
mhm.
and you could see commercials about punk bands. You could come home and hear "Welcome to My Life." Like you'd still catch songs like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
You don't. That doesn't happen anymore.
no,
And
no,
and eventually culture changed, and hip hop's the number one genre in the world.
yeah,
It does more streams. It sells. And that's awesome. I think that's great. But it does mean that like I guess some of us guys who came to love punk when it was like a really dominant genre, that has kind of gone away from games and things like you're saying. Because I mean, even the last Madden I played, which I think was like Madden 17 or something like that.
Mhm.
No, it was like all hip hop soundtrack for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love hip hop, man. I love rap music, all that. So,
Yeah, for sure.
and especially like some of the song selections that they pick for those games. I mean, it's to get you hyped, dude. It's supposed to get you excited. And I mean,
Yeah.
rock and punk can do the same thing. And most of those songs that you would hear on a NCAA or Madden were kind of like, upbeat and got you going because you're like, yeah, you're about to
Yeah,
play this game and should be
exactly.
excited, should be having fun. But
But
just
they
in,
under
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say they underestimate. Listen, man. Listen, Lockjaw can get me pretty hype, but you can Smashing Pumpkins can also get me hype.
Right.
Okay, like you
Yeah.
can do both,
Yeah.
EA.
Yeah. No, it's fun, man. It's just fun to think about how some of those songs they replay over and over again, and they get stuck in your head, and they like really make an impact on like your musical taste. Like just
Yeah.
growing up, like all the different ways. Like, would you say that you're more impacted or influenced by music from like movies and television, or video games, anime? Just in general, music in general has always just been like highest influence. Because I mean, from like doing the type of content that you've done where you've had to like create background noise, or like create that atmosphere, and think about how that would be. I'm sure you think back to some of your favorite television, movies, video games, and stuff like that, but where do you feel like the most influence when it comes to like Ghost Planet and stuff?
When it comes to Ghost Planet, I've actually had to think about this recently. So I have it all, and it's the main reason I wanted to talk about Andre 3000's album. You know, I
Mm,
didn't just decide to out of nowhere. He really is very influential to me because he came out at a really pivotal time, and it's an album that he made called The Love Below. And I remember reading a review in like 2003 or something like that on early internet where a guy called it the album Prince never made. Um, and I think that's true. And I was so young, man, that just hearing an album that was very complex and sonically it was very, very adventurous. Like I don't know if you've ever listened to it, but if you haven't, I challenge you to try The Love Below just because. And then remember when it came out in 2003 and how sort of forward thinking it was for, because nowadays you could hear artists put out albums like that, but back then that was kind of rare.
mm-hmm.
And so it had skits and things, and it wasn't as adventurous as some of the stuff you've heard me do, but I just thought it was such a beautiful album. Like there were violins and pianos and string sections, and it was all very unique but also very, very lavish, and it sounded expensive. And it just impressed upon me at a very early age that when it comes to production, it just, I don't know, like it helps to sort of be weird with it. And that's what drew me to Pharrell Williams as well. A lot of my friends were drawn, especially around that time, were drawn to like Lil Wayne, really common people like that. But I was really interested in the Andre 3000s of the world. I know he's persona non grata these days. We're not going to get into that. But back in the day, the Kanye Wests of the world, uh, the people who were marching their own drum like that musically were really influential. Like the Lupe Fiascos, those were really cool to me, and I paid attention to them. I mean, for a while, I went through like a skater guy phase, and around that time, a lot of the people I was listening to were very skate leaning. Like Pharrell used to be big about the skate scene, and I was watching like Terry Kennedy videos and things like that. And a lot of that, even though it had nothing to do with what I do now, it just really, I got a different ear for music, man. And like synthesizers. That's really, like if I had to sum it up, like the early 2000 synth was just so smooth to me. And like before trap music became really popular and like hi-hats and bass and things like that, like all my friends love stuff like that. I love things with like cool mellow beats where like towards the middle they break down completely and become a different song, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they come back from that later and you're like, "Ooh, that was nice." And like that just gave me sort of a musical ear. So fast forward to like 2015, a Logic album, The Incredible True Story.
That's
I
one of
think that
my
was
favorites, dude, to be real.
it's a classic. It's a classic. I think it was his second album.
Yeah.
Um, I had not listened to the first. I saw the cover, got curious. I think Spotify at the time, shout out to Spotify. Those suggestions and those raps, I don't know, man. Sometimes they turn you into good stuff.
Yeah,
And
they do. That's a good
yeah,
feeling, man.
literally, I'm not trying to shill, but Spotify pays for itself, is all I'm saying. So it went, hey, you'd probably like this guy Logic in this album. And I just put it in, and as soon as I heard like a spaceship land and a door open and Steve Bloom get in, I was like, oh man, it's Spike Spiegel. And like it just and I know you've listened to it, but when you listen to it from start to finish and you listen to the skits where they're on the spaceship, and it was very like Mystery Science Theater 3000, but it was cooler than that. And Logic was at his best, I think, on that album. Like he was still so hungry, and every song was so conceptual, and like it just all blended together. And I don't know, man, that album sparked something. It sparked something. Like it just let me know that you could take some sound effects and you could make something. You could bring a concept to life, a very high concept to life,
You,
and those all those things kind of combined together.
you know
Um,
what though, bro? Like, you know what album when you bring up that Logic album, what I would say impacted me in that same way was probably Kid Cudi Man on the Moon. When you
that's
have
a great one.
you have that narration kind of connecting and telling this like story through music, like, and taking you on this journey. And that's why and I don't know, maybe newer generations have a harder time with this, because as much as we love Spotify for introducing us to new music and stuff, because my weekly playlist, discovery playlist, has been really hitting lately, and it's been fun because I love just going, oh, I like this is good, adding to the playlist now. So I like that a lot. But man, there's nothing quite like listening to an album from start to finish, and really enjoying the whole project, the whole work of art, the whole piece. Like, not just like selective, not just like one or two, like, and the uniqueness of like them saying, let's have fun with this.
That's
Like,
true.
this tell a story, like this add this element, like Kendrick Lamar's stuff, like with the little
Was
voicemails and
literally about to say, Good Kid, Mad City was the
yeah.
only album in my life that I listened to it full through once, and immediately I listened to it full through again.
Wow, nice.
Because it took me a long time. Like people at where I worked at the time had been pushing me to get into Kendrick Lamar very heavy, and I hadn't made my way around to it. He had just put out Good Kid, Mad City. So the people who were telling me this, they were on Kendrick from Section 80.
Wow.
So they were early adopters. And Section 80 was a great album. People should go back to that. But when I finally went home and listened to it, I was like, oh my God, that was really good. Damn, I feel like I just watched Boys in the Hood or like Don't Be a Menace or something. It feels like I just watched a John Singleton movie, but I listened to it. I'm gonna play it again. And then I did, and it's just the way he produced it to where it can be a perfect circle like that, to where the ending rolls right into the beginning, to where if you have it on loop, it's a seamless circle. And I think yeah, Damn is like that as well. Damn is was made so well you can play it in reverse and the story is different. But if yeah literally like for a while he was so impressive with that, so cool, and I'm sure he would still be if he put out a project tomorrow. But been a while since we heard from Kendrick.
Yeah, I think he's been kind of laying low, man. But
J.
that,
Cole hasn't.
yeah, J. Cole's, well, and he's got something coming out, and I'm really looking forward to that. But
Yeah, that
I,
man's on fire.
I think like when you talk about those albums and projects, and when they do take so long, and you could probably connect that to video games and any other works of art, whether it's movies, television, stories, books. Like, when things take so long, um, I have such a more an understanding more than I ever, a respect, because I understand that, to make something that good, it takes consistent passion, and it takes like inspiration that is very unique. Um, And like, it's not really to be perfect. I don't think. I think you could probably find flaws or have songs on albums that you're like, yeah, I mean, I listen to it, but is it like my favorite? Nah, but it's not bad.
I
You
think a
know,
good example is the latest Drake album, the latest two Drake albums. Now, I'm not a huge Drake fan, but I did listen to For All the Dogs. I didn't care for that. I did not care for that. But then he put out Scary Hours 3,
yeah.
okay?
And he had those
And on
old beats, like the samples that were like
right, but
soulful. Yeah.
he is going off on Scary Hours 3. Scary Hours 3 is amazing.
Mm.
And it's literally like, okay, so what was going on in your actual album? Like, maybe you should retire or something, man. You don't really seem to have much to talk about anymore. I'm just being real. And I think Logic got there too.
Oh,
I think
Logic totally got there, man.
right. I
All
think
those guys
yes,
did. That's like the flaw with that kind of like artistry is like when Drake's talking about these places and things because he's so damn rich now that I can't relate, and
I can't relate to.
I'm like, hey, bro, good for
Right.
you, but I'm not walking into that hotel or spending. I'm just trying to get to my next check,
Exactly.
bro.
He's naming people in the song like you know who they are. He's
Yeah,
like, I can never trust Eric. You're like, who is Eric?
yeah, exactly, yeah. But
I don't know these characters, Drake. I don't know these people
yeah,
in your life.
I'm sorry, man. And I mean, that's what really gravitates me to a lot of artists is like being able to relate to some degree. Like,
Yeah.
and hey, I think we all want to be successful. And there's like sometimes we'll listen to things like that. And we kind of live through them for a moment. And you're like, you feel that way. You're like, yeah, that feeling of being successful and making it. Mm.
Well, I think it's about passion. It's like Drake put out one album and I just didn't hear any passion on it. I heard Obligation.
Ah, ooh.
And then Scary Hours 3 came out and I heard passion.
He said he like did that within days too. Like,
Well, damn it, there's a problem there. Why are you making whole albums that sound like I mean, come on, man. No one wants to hear Drake complain about his life anymore.
well, and I think Drake
Like I just
doesn't put out albums anymore. They're more like playlists, man. They're not
they
like
really are.
it's like such a wide range of, random shit
Yeah,
that he
and
couldn't like decide what direction he wanted this to be. Like,
right. And you know what else? I feel like with every single because I mean, if you've listened to Drake a good bit, he kind of you'll have an album like Scary Hours 3 where you're like Views,
hmm.
where you're like, ooh, okay. Or Take Care. You're like, ooh, okay. And then or Marvin's Room or something like that. And then you'll have ones like God, what was that one he made that had like two songs I liked on it? Like More Life. He'll put out like More Life. And it's like, what is this? Bomba de Rhythm? What is this, Drake?
But
And like
but as artists, as creators, and everybody is in their own way. Everyone should understand that like people go through phases. So there's like
sure.
when I look at that, I go, yeah, that's when Drake was really into this. The thing that I've grown after years, and I used to really stand Drake. Like I was really into Drake. I still do. Like I look forward to his stuff, but I can't sit here and
I
tell you
like him.
like I like everything he's put out recently. It's just not hit. It hasn't connected. And I feel like
Exactly.
it's like he's just going, what's trendy, what's popular. And that's what kind of can be a double-edged sword to being so adaptable is that you lose who you really are. I think like Drake can just be whatever he wants and whatever is popping at the time. And I think that's something that people have said about Drake is that he'll go and find like, yo, this up and coming rapper, let me jump on your song. Remember the Drake effect, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
J. Cole
Let,
mentioned that it's not quite the Drake
let
effect,
me associate myself with your sound real quick.
Yeah, take credit. I'll bring you. Like Ice Spice, I think came from Drake just even name dropping her. Like was like, yeah, you need to check out this one girl, and then look at where she's at now. I mean,
I mean, good for her.
but yeah, I mean, and you have to like carry that, but people just it's brand association, bro. It's like if somebody says like, yo, I like this thing and you like me, then go to that thing. It's like, well, gotta do what they're
Yeah.
doing. It's kind of like the Prime shit that I see from like Jake Paul and them. Just like, I've noticed a different technique in marketing now with social media
What,
and the
cringe?
will cringe and just how you can just get people to like, yo, can you post on social media drinking Prime. If your followers see you drinking Prime, they'll drink Prime. They don't even need to know that I made it or know anything about me. It's kind of like the Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift effect, bruh. It's
yeah, I really wonder about that. I'm sure there are definitely kids who drink Prime because Paul drinks Prime, but
exactly.
I don't know, man. See, we come from a different time actually, and I've started saying this to be funny. It's starting to ring true.
Yeah,
we were built different in the '90s and the early 2000s, man. Like I'm starting to say that. Like I said that on the last episode of my show. But like people used to get into fist fights and stuff, and no one would get shot or stabbed. It's like people used to get into disagreements, and we would have problems. And so just we were built a little different, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like I don't know, man. Like you got to be authentically yourself, and I feel like sometimes Drake sort of sees a culture that's doing well, and he finds it, and he steals the sound, and I don't know. I just wish he didn't do that. I like his music a lot too. I really do, because I used to watch him on Degrassi years before he'll always be Wheelchair Jimmy to me, because years before he was Drake, I'm talking like 6 or 7 years before he was Drake, I knew him as Jimmy from Degrassi, who played basketball and who was Spinner's best friend. All right. So the fact that today he's the biggest artist, period, right?
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's literally like we're living in the Twilight Zone for me sometimes. So all props to him, and it's just and I want to ask you something too.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I feel like when he really wants to, he gives us great music. And in between that, he makes I don't know, like shake weight music. Music you use shake weight with. But have you heard the new Andre 3000 album?
Dude, full transparency, like I would not lie to you, bro. You know that. I was excited about this, but learned about it pretty close to it happening, or if not it happening. And what I noticed is when I first played it and I read the title track and it said, you know, I wanted to do a rap album and I didn't. And sorry, my girlfriend is walking in the room right now and she's making all the noise that she possibly can without trying to make all the noise that she possibly
how you doing?
can. So, Kenny said hey.
Hi.
So, but the moment I heard the flute and I was driving listening to this album and minutes went by and I was like, there's no lyrics, like there's not gonna be anything. And then I started skipping through it and I was just like, no man, is this man trolling us? I really thought he was trolling us. But then I'm also thinking like, you know, I get that maybe like he really sat down and said like, you know, I know what people want from me and what they've expected, but where I am creatively, that's not the energy I can put out there into the world. And I respected that. Like, I think that was something that I wanted to bring up is just like, there's dangers of being the consumer and the creator for a long time because things will change. I mean, we talked about Star Wars before we hit record. We've talked about Dragon Ball. We've talked about these things that we got into them at a certain period of time. We're fond to that period specifically. It's like I'm a prequel fan, you know, because that was my Star Wars growing up when they were doing it. You could say that about like who's your favorite Batman? Well, it just depends on who was Batman when you were growing up. Maybe, you know, sometimes that's just how it works, right? But there's dangers because as a creator, you want to change or you have to change. You have to adapt. Maybe Star Wars is, or like a good example would probably be like something like J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, where it's like, yo, like modern day Star Trek is like flashy, action packed, man. It's like,
I say I'm a huge Trek fan. We could talk about it. You're right.
I mean, it's just like, yo, this is Star Trek for today. This is not your mom and dad's Star Trek. We are not the next generation or anything before that. This is like we are, you know, lens flares
and Brave New Worlds and Discovery are different from that even.
Exactly. And Strange New Worlds, I love that. I love that shit. I feel like that's like the perfect middle. It's like modern, but we respect. And
dude, Captain Pike is my guy.
He's so cool. I've read the book, or I'm almost.
He's
done.
So cool. I
There's
didn't
a
even tell. I'm not reading the book, but I started playing Star Trek Online
oh,
because of that game.
that's
I didn't
cool.
even know. I didn't even know that existed, but I started playing it. Dude, you get your own ship, your own crew. I've been
Hmm.
enjoying it a lot.
There's a guy named Lore Runner that just has like reviewed all of the Star Treks, like all the
Dude, I know
episodes.
Lore Runner. I
Dude,
used to
yeah.
listen to his World of Warcraft videos.
Yeah, he does war like Lorecraft, or he'll do stuff with, yeah, he loves that shit. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
But I, by listening to him and his passion and knowledge about Star Trek, got me curious enough to try out Star Trek. Plus Star Wars has not been my thing, dude. Just
No.
hasn't hit with Disney, with The Mandalorian and all the different the shows. I have not watched a lot of the Disney Plus stuff for Marvel and Star Wars. Like, and dude, if you would have told me 6 years ago like we were gonna get all these things, I would have been excited. But dude,
You had every right to be excited. The thing is, and I've been keeping a closer eye on this stuff than it sounds like you might have. I've been keeping an eye on it. I've watched some of these things,
okay.
and the quality ranges from pretty good sometimes to not so great. The issue we're sort of having is I feel like Disney is being. I'd be really careful what I say here
Mm-hmm.
because I don't like sport or team sports is
Right.
what I like to call it. So it's really that Disney seems to sort of lack. It's in a weird creative direction right now, where it's almost making these things up. You know how they're making these live action movies no one asked for,
Yeah.
like live action Lilo and Stitch is coming out, and Stitch looks like a horrible CGI monster. It's terrifying. I mean, it does to me anyway. And it's like Disney, no one asked for this, but they're making it, and you better believe they're making more. And that's how I feel with the Star Wars side of things. They're it's cool. Listen, I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the idea of him having a show seems really cool, but what we got was only really cool sometimes. And it's because, and I feel like online, and I see it in my comment sections. I did a Star Wars poll the other day. I feel like you get a lot of people who won't let you criticize new Star Wars without labeling you a whole lot of things, man.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be careful when you criticize it because you'll get dismissed very easily because of that. But I'm very open to whatever the hell Star Wars wants to do. And I think a lot of these shows have just been weird and kind of misses. And that just seems to be less of a Star Wars thing and more of a Disney thing. Because Marvel has been having the same thing go on. Marvel movies are doing terribly at the box office. I wanted to do a whole episode about this, but I actually think we're on the cusp of what could be the death of Western cinema. I mean, that's maybe a conversation for another time. I'm not saying that based off nothing either. I think it started with COVID, and I think with a lot of the box office returns we're seeing on a lot of films right now, I actually really do think. Plus, with the overwhelming success of Godzilla minus one, a foreign film, in direct comparison to a lot of the films our biggest filmmakers have been putting out and how they've been performing,
Mhm.
there's some type of Western fatigue going on. And I've heard people in really high spaces say things like, if we want to keep modern cinema, we are going to have to start going to the movies to support the medium or it'll die. That seems hyperbolic to me, but I've been hearing a lot of people say that. But with Star Wars, it like a lot of other Disney movies seems directionless. It seems like they just went, what would people watch? Obi-Wan Kenobi, they like him, right? Let's make a show about that. What'll he do in it? I don't know. We'll figure it out week to week, but just make it. Just it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we'll make a show about it. And they did that with Ahsoka too, which I like Ahsoka Tano. I've heard that show is kind of meh, you know. It's unfortunate. Like Disney has just put out all this stuff, and I feel like a lot of it is so-so. The Marvel stuff's the same way. I was watching a lot of that stuff. Loki, the Hawkeye show, the Guardians Christmas special. That was great. That was really good, surprisingly. But some of that stuff was not good. Like WandaVision was only kind of okay. Loki is the best thing they did. The Captain America Winter Soldier show, dude. Looking back on that, nah, kind of wasn't it.
I think
I,
looking back at all that too, we were prisoners of the moment. I think when we look back on it, we'll be like, damn, like, yeah, there were some payoffs and like it was really cool to see how things like merged and weaved together. But when you really look at them individually, they don't hold up because
they don't.
they didn't. We were so hyped to hear like you get an individual standalone story and then you get a piece of to the puzzle to this grander story. And that was like the
Right.
first time we were really seeing that play out in that way with so many different characters. You know, we've watched trilogies. I mean, there's eight, what, seven, eight Harry Potter movies, what, now six Lord of the Rings with like the show now. And then they have some, is I guess the anime coming out, an anime movie coming out this year in 2024. I just found out
Yeah.
about the other night. And,
Something like that.
I feel like they're gonna ring that out. Amazon's just gonna be like, Lord of the Rings. We're trying to
Oh
find the
yeah.
next Game of Thrones. Like Rings of
Oh
Power.
yeah.
Me and my girlfriend watched, man, and
What'd you think about that?
it was okay.
You know what? I actually haven't because I know what type of Lord of the Rings fan I am.
Mm.
I'm the real deal, man. I could speak some Sindarin. I could speak a little Quenya, okay? And I know the difference between the two. I've read the Silmarillion. I've attended college lectures from Signum University, which is the Tolkien University in Lord of the Rings
Oh
online.
wow.
I've I was born at just the right time. I went to go see him in theaters. I was a huge nerd about it then, and I remain to this day. I had convinced my last fiance we were having a Lord of the Rings wedding. She was gonna wear the ears.
Oh
I was
wow.
gonna be from Rohan. She was gonna be an elf. It was gonna be a whole thing, man. So
That's
I
awesome.
have not watched it because I already know I'm gonna find problems. I'm gonna be mad they did this different or that different. I hear, like I've seen like, black dwarves and black elves. I think all that's really cool. I got no problem with anything like that. It's more of the choices they might make on what happens in what periods of time,
Mm.
who shows up at what points of time, and how they represent places like Numenor.
They're rushing a lot of stuff. I mean,
See?
yeah,
Yep, there you go.
because they have to, and they have to try to make sense of things. Look, man, I mean, look, this is just funny because, like, I know it kind of seems like we jump from Star Wars to Lord of the Rings and stuff, but these all kind of fall into a same
They kind of
issue.
do.
It's something even just relevant to like just now as we're recording. And I had to convince my girlfriend to watch it, and she barely watched the first episode. But that live action Yu Yu Hakusho on Netflix, like, there's only 5 episodes of that. I watched about three of them, and then I checked out. I said, "Yeah, I'm good,
I
man."
was
Like,
gonna say,
yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I have not watched it myself, but I have not heard great things so far.
I think we're burnt out. You say like Western cinema. I think it's just we're burnt out on all these adaptations of. We have all these different things. Like, we don't need Star Wars movies, Star Wars TV shows, Star Wars books, Star Wars this, like, that's great, and I don't mind it. But I think what I'm saying is, like, we can have those things. Sure, we don't need those things. We're burnt out on lack of originality in our generations. It just seems like we just keep on recycling a lot now and just going. Maybe we don't need any more Lord of the Rings movies. Maybe we didn't need any more Star Wars, to be
Right, right, right.
honest, and yet we did. And now they like, we once we start, we can't stop, because there
And
are
it,
people who are going to buy it, and we are going to make money off of it because you're going to give us a chance every time, because
sure.
you know.
Yeah, and that I don't know, man. I think that's kind of an issue. I mean, we do give them a chance every time, and
Well,
they do take it for granted that they can just keep doing this over and over, and we'll just buy it every time.
but what
That's
if
why we
it's
have this.
but what if it's like Andre, right? Like, maybe we didn't need that album,
We didn't. I
but we
mean, well,
got
okay,
it.
okay,
But it was so different. Maybe that's what, from some of these, they need to stop going, hey, we need to hit all these same notes, and we got to do what people want, what they expect, and we just got to do something so different. And hey, if they like it, cool. If not,
well,
cool.
they don't have any, they don't have it. Well, I'll go back for 1 second and say I didn't mean. Andre made his album for him,
Yeah, I
and
think so.
I feel like we need to let him make that album for him, so that if there's ever going to be another album that sounds like what we know him for, he may have to get this out.
That's fair.
Uh,
I think we're
Because
on the same page.
Right, because I for one know for sure that he has had no problem popping up on rap features every year, despite him saying he didn't want to make a rap.
Yeah,
Or I know he said he wanted to make a rap album but couldn't, but that has not stopped him from rapping. He has appeared on features recently and has for the last 20 years. He never stopped rapping. So he could make a rap album, but he's got to get, I think, these flute albums out first before he can do that. But
yeah,
I don't think Hollywood has all they're doing is going back to old wells. And to varying degrees of success is kind of my issue. Sometimes they do it well. I think I think Cobra Kai on Netflix is an example of a Western show that is very good. It's about the Karate Kid, obviously, but I think it's done a really cool. I think that show made Karate Kid cool. And I never thought I'd say that. I mean, Karate Kid's a good movie. I think Kid 2 is a good movie. And then we can stop right there. But I would never say, oh, those are cool movies. The lore of Karate Kid is cool. But they've made it cool because they made a show where they went back and got all the old characters and put them in like fanficky fight scenes where you get Tony Silva or whatever from Karate Kid 2 having a rematch with Daniel San in the modern day while they're both 40-year-old dads. And that's I don't know, man. That's kind of cool. Like when you like have Johnny beating random dudes' asses in parking lots like he's some type of superhero, and he's just the blonde kid from Karate Kid. They found a way to make that interesting. So it's not like everyone has no original ideas or that you can't go back to something and expand upon it in a good way. But you got to go back with good intentions. And I feel like a lot of the time they're just approaching these things, excuse me, these things going, how can we make the most money off this?
Mm-hmm. Very
And
much
the
so.
Yu and the Yu Yu Hakusho thing, I'll be honest with you, it's kind of sad because it seems like they went out of their way to make sure that they got actors of Asian descent, which I do think is important if you're gonna adapt Yu Yu Hakusho. You could show some respect and get some Asian actors. It took place in Japan. We're all, you know what I mean? Like the people who love this show, we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
You do not need to change the race of these characters from Japan. Set it in Japan and make them Japanese.
And it's by a Japanese production company. So
And
I
that
mean,
that's awesome. So I'm really sad to hear that apparently it's not that good. You're not the first person to tell me that they kind of were like "Ugh," really quickly. And I've seen a couple scenes from it where I go, "Oh boy." And it just kind of reinforces that the One Piece show was like luck, I guess. Because I've actually, from what I've seen of the One Piece show, that one was pretty good, and a lot of people seem to think it's pretty good. I've heard nothing but positive things about the One Piece Netflix show, but that seems to be like they took 5, 6 shots because they did Death Note 2. It seems like they took a bunch of shots and One Piece was the only one that hit.
so like this kind of leads to a bigger conversation. I mean, do you think it's possible? I mean, obviously, you say like with One Piece, like they were able to take something like One Piece, an anime, and turn it into live action. And but we're seeing now, like I don't know if you saw the other day, they're making a live action Death Stranding with A24 now. We're getting a live action Zelda, which I feel like is a weird choice.
That is a weird
Like the
choice.
director even said, like I want to make it like a pretty much like a live action Studio Ghibli movie. And I just
Okay.
me and my girlfriend, we just saw The Boy and the Heron the other day, like the other weekend. We went to a theater and saw it, and I just look at that and I go, why you have Super Mario as like CGI animation, like
Yeah.
just do this with Zelda
Yeah.
and you'll
You
make
you know who I would definitely. Because I'll tell you what, the Sonic movie has demonstrated you can just make a video game movie and it'll be good. Because and I'll get back to Sonic in a minute. That's a whole tangent for me. I think those movies are the best video game movies we have. But
really the
I do
best.
I think so far they are the most because there are two of them now.
Two's better than one. I'll say that.
Two is better than one is mid but good enough for what it needed to be,
Hmm.
and two is like okay, all right.
And,
Now I want to see where you're going.
and three will be even better because I think they're bringing in Shadow.
Shadow, exactly. So, and we all know where three is going. Three is a can't miss. If they adapt Sonic Adventure 2 in any way, shape, or form, they cannot miss with three.
I think it's going to be better because it's going to be more Sonic and away from like here's that human character that
Human character,
yeah.
right, right. You know what? Actually, sure, we can do it right now. I think that's why those movies are so good because that first one almost feels like it had to happen
Mm-hmm.
so that they can slowly move away from it. They get it. It was because it was very because remember it was going to be a whole different ugly Sonic. And so that movie got kind of like half baked and then changed. But what they managed to do with it was set up Jim Carrey's Eggman, which was genius.
He's
Looking back,
good, bro.
he's so good.
He's
He's having so
good.
much fun.
I know people
He's
were
having
so
so much
mad
fun.
at the first one and they saw him and they're like, that's not Eggman. Eggman's supposed to be this big guy and he's bald and he's got this. I'm like, bro, just let it play out.
Let that man cook.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey said, "Listen, do you not remember the '90s? Do you not remember me?"
I love Jim
And then
Carrey.
he got in there and he killed it. Yes, I love your lattes. I love the way you make them. Like, dude,
Man.
he was so great. And two, as you said, was even better. And I think three will be good. So with the Studio Ghibli thing, when I hear that, I kind of feel like they could do it. But you know who I would have loved to seen direct a Zelda movie?
Ooh.
Like Guillermo del Toro. Like the dude who did Pan's Labyrinth. I feel like because I feel like he could have done like the monsters really cool and like he would have leaned into it. Like, and you know what I think of when I think of
He
I
would have
specifically
done.
think of like
Yeah. I guess
I'm thinking of like Twilight Princess when I say that.
I,
Like
I,
think like think about a Guillermo del Toro directed Twilight Princess. Link running on Epona through dark, misty fields.
okay. Okay, now you're starting to
The
pull me.
castle. Yeah, the castle
Maybe for the
shrouded in
sequel.
darkness.
That's the sequel.
Okay.
That's the dark sequel, like The Empire Strikes Back in that trilogy. I would bring him in. It's kind of like when Prisoner of Azkaban, you could tell like the tone. Oh, we're shifting, dude. So you got to get someone in that's different that brings that. But I kind of see what you're saying with like the Pan's Labyrinth and shit. I'm thinking like more of like that kind of fantasy vibe, dude, like that from that time. Or a little bit even a little like what's that one with Tom Cruise and then like the big Satan dude with the big horns and
Oh.
stuff. You know that movie? There's like that kind of like 80s fantasy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like just imagine like I could see like a practical effect Goron walking out of the darkness or something.
Yes.
Like a bunch of practical effect Goron walking out of darkness in like a big ravine and they greet Link and take him up with torches and I don't know, man. I think
That'd
it
be
would have been
cool.
so cool. They don't make movies like that anymore though.
I know. I know.
Yeah, The
That's
Legend of Zelda I want would have been made like 20 years ago.
and it could have been done too. I mean, it's very possible. I'm surprised they went with the Mario Brothers back then versus some of the other properties. But like, dude, I think there's exciting things about that. Like, I like the idea of like Nintendo kind of following that kind of the blueprint that the MCU had is like, hey, this is our spy thriller. This is this superhero, but it's the buddy cop film that we got. You could do stuff like where each one of these characters in Nintendo, when they have a movie, have a different style and art. Like imagine Star Fox being like or Metroid. Like if I mean, you could do live action, you could do 2D animation. You could. I think that would be really cool to see
It
them
would
kind of
be.
taste like all different kinds of like mediums of
Yeah.
art there.
Listen, if we lived in the best timeline possible, okay? If we lived in the sacred timeline, we
Yeah.
would get a Mario movie, a Sonic movie, a Zelda movie, a Fox movie, a Samus movie for Metroid, and a couple others, and then they'd do Smash Bros. The movie, and it would break every record everywhere. It'd have the biggest box opening in history to date. It'd beat Titanic. It would beat
It
Avatar.
would.
It'd be the biggest thing anyone could ever remember. It'd be like Endgame all over again, dude.
I think that's the only thing that's out there right now that has the potential to beat that moment if they were to
Yeah,
go in that direction. I think
that and a Marvel DC crossover, which has been a conversation held several times already. That is not as impossible as it sounds. People have had the conversations about it before. That's what surprises me is apparently there have been at least two separate conversations about a possible DC Warner or Marvel crossover in film already.
yeah.
But DC just they hadn't been able to get things together on the film side of it.
And I hope they do with James, man. But like, I don't know, man. I something kind of unrelated, but related to that specific conversation as far as like comic books and stuff like that. I recently had tried to get back into comics and stuff, but I don't
How's
know,
that going?
man. It didn't last long. Like I still have a list at my local comic book shop I need to go pick up, and I feel very bad. But it just has become kind of like I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel like it's there. Like you kind of want to get it for collective reasons. There's art that you appreciate, but like sometimes the story. Just wish that Western comics would adapt more of like a manga presentation, get a full story, or just wait for the volumes. I know a lot of people do that. But I was hearing like the other day that I don't know if you're familiar with this guy on YouTube, the comic historian. You
Yeah, I
probably
watch him.
okay. Well, he released a video the other week that was like, yeah, guys, like MCU movies and comic book movies and shit aren't doing so good. So like we're not doing so good. So that means we're gonna have to like cut back on content, and I'm gonna have to cut back on things. And I was like, oh shit, like because a lot of those channels like like just rode in
Yeah.
through like the popularity of like Marvel and even
And
DC.
they live and die on that
They
popularity
do,
as well.
right? Yeah, it's like anything, like reaction channels to certain things, video game streamers, like when there's like good video games or stuff, like they're like, we're just
Yeah.
making do, like we're just out here. So I there's a well, first of all, it is kind of wild that Marvel was so successful in the movies that they weren't able to make that translate into the comic industry. I don't know who's at
Yeah.
fault with that, and that's like a larger conversation that I don't have like the proper. I don't
Well,
know.
from what I understand, Marvel comics have been, and I know DC comics have been struggling. From what I've always understood, DC comics have always, at least I'm talking maybe the last 10 years or so. DC comics have done okay, at times not great, but okay, and Marvel comics have been having trouble for a pretty long time now. I know some series do well, but like Spider-Man, for instance, has apparently just not been good for a very, very,
Yeah,
very long time,
which
like
is
a
sad.
really long time. And I used to keep up with DC comics. I stopped reading DC around the arc where they were doing God, what's the last thing that happened? It was after Death Knight's Metal. So it was after the Batman Who Laughs. It was after all of that was done. They moved into some other things, and I slowly drifted away. But I was reading a lot during the 2010s when they were doing New 52. I got on at the start of New 52 and was collecting that run for a while. Now I don't really like it in hindsight. But for a while there, I was collecting through the New 52 era, and so I kind of feel your pain. But I didn't get into a lot of Marvel comics. Um, it took me a long time to come around on Marvel. Uh, but yeah, from what I understand, they've kind of been struggling on the comic thing for a while, and the movies doing so well was kind of carrying them in all other areas.
Yeah. Well, then COVID hit, and then like that, I think that hurt comic shops in general and stuff like that. I mean, physical
Yeah,
media is going through a thing right now, man. That's a whole conversation too, man. It's just so wild when you sit back and think, but yeah, it is kind of weird with like Marvel not being able to translate that. But I don't know, man. I don't know if that's just that medium is going through a hard time. I mean, we've seen it in video games, we've seen it in all these things. Like they kind of go up and down. They have their like golden age, and then they have like a rough period. And I mean, it's bound to happen. I mean, some would argue that's the case with video games. Some would argue that's the case with music. I mean, it just depends. Like everybody has that moment where they go like this was like peak NBA
yeah.
basketball. This was peak, this or that, like depending on like, you know.
And there's such thing as a point of oversaturation too, and I think we've kind of reached it with a lot of these things,
I think you're
with a
right.
lot of them. Yeah.
So what do you do about that, man? Like I guess you just like is it on the consumer to limit themselves and discipline themselves to go like, hey, maybe I need to
No, I don't think so because like Cream, good ideals will rise to the top, and that's why things like Invincible are so popular right now.
Yeah.
Invincible is a superhero show, but people love it because it's doing a lot of things. It's more of
The Boys
a
is good too.
The Boys is really good. Shows like that are doing well. They are well regarded. They're critically received well, and I think it's just because they're good. There's really no other way. There's no way around that. They're just very good. And I feel like at we're at the point where, you can't just take for granted that something that comes out that involves a universe or characters that you're interested in is going to be quality
Mm.
anymore. I had to learn that lesson the hard way because I'm just a really loyal fan to the things that I like. So coming up in the 2000s and loving Justice League and Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series and Justice League Unlimited and Batman Beyond, that whole web of shows, and reading DC at the same time, I was really loyal to DC Comics. I loved DC characters and heroes. I played DC Online the first day that came became available, you know. Um, and and it took me a long time to get into Marvel, but I had to accept the hard way that just because they make a movie about it doesn't mean it's going to be good. You know how many disappointments I've had to sit through with DC as someone who was excited for like Man of Steel from day one. Like so, it's just from Man of Steel to Batman versus Superman to the first Justice League, through all those movies, man, I had to get used to being disappointed with Hollywood's output for characters I cared a great deal about.
But here's the thing that what I think about though, and it's unfortunate but it's true because I love Spider-Man, I love Batman. I'm pretty sure if you were to look up the comic sales, those are some of the top selling comics all the time, no matter what. And it's kind of like sometimes we crave originality, we crave diversity, we crave a variety of things and options. But then at the same time, if you go into your city, your local town, whatever, and you see like certain restaurants and places that there's just like, why do we have 10, 10 McDonald's and they're all like down the street from each other? It's like, well, why don't we have different restaurants? It's like, because y'all want the same thing. Like, you're guilty of it in some way. Like, I feel like there is a part of us that is part of the problem. Like, I love Spider-Man, but now it's like, as much as I love the Spider-Verse movies, I really think what's killing comics in general with media is the multiverse and just having so many different variations of the same fucking thing. And it's just like sometimes, like you said, like I haven't played Spider-Man 2. I've heard people who loved it. People were like, "Yeah, it was good." I mean, if you like the first one, blah blah blah. But
The
like,
story looks I haven't played it either. The
yeah,
story looks crazy in that game. Venom looks crazy in
he
that game.
does, and I love like I had a good time with the first one. But I think they're just like you're hitting people going. You have Tom Holland, Spider-Man. You're gonna have Spider-Man, like Miles Morales and the Across the Spider-Verse movies. You're gonna have his Spidey and his Amazing Friends kids show that's on Disney Junior. Then you're gonna have it's just like you kind of go, here's
That's too
like
much.
20 different Spider-Man things. Enjoy them
Yeah.
all. Ingest them all. I think that's what the problem with Disney too is just like they're like,
And don't and just like you said earlier, because I have some of these people on my platform. I see them every day. You have people out there who will consume as much of that as they can make. But I think what those people need to understand is that is not everyone. That's not even the majority. And that's what's being reflected in these box office numbers and in these low streaming numbers. People are, by and large, now in large numbers, starting to move on from these properties because of oversaturation. And I've been seeing, because I spend a lot of time looking at not necessarily film critique, but at different opinions on film.
mhm.
And like I'll listen to John Campnia. He's a guy I think is cool just to hear updates from someone who's a little closer to execs in Hollywood and people who have these conversations. Like he'll give you a good opinion on why a movie might have been made in the first place. And it's like, a lot of these audiences by and large just aren't showing up for these things anymore. And now it's putting companies like Disney's in a place where they're scared for Avengers movies. They're scared to put those out now. Because what if no one comes? That would be so much egg on Bob Iger's face if they got to an Avengers movie and they couldn't break like $50 million. That and I think for them that is the absolute worst case scenario and they're scared to death of that. And so you're right, they are at the point where they're throwing out all that stuff, but the oversaturation I think is already showing in a couple of different ways. And man, if they don't stop, they're going to get to a reality where people aren't coming out of their house for Avengers movies.
Right.
And at that point, you fumbled the whole bag.
Um, do you know much about this Rebel Moon coming out on Netflix by Zack Snyder?
I only know that that's what he officially moved on to after leaving the DC stuff. I heard rumblings of it when he was first working on it, but honestly, I literally was like, when I was seeing articles about Rebel Moon, I went, "Oh, that's Zach's new thing. At least he's done with DC, and they'll leave him the hell alone. Good for him." I never looked any further than that, so I don't know anything about it.
Oh man, I'll shoot you the trailer here and get your reaction maybe after we record real quick. But Yeah,
It looked
man.
kind of like Doom or
It,
Dune rather.
yeah, like it's like a sci-fi. It's supposed to be like Zack Snyder's Star Wars, so like take with
That's
that.
exactly what I thought when I looked at it.
Yeah.
That's what it seemed like. It
Um.
reminded me of that and a book by Harry Harrison, I believe was his name, called Planet of the Damned, which
Really?
Escape from New York was based on that book.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Oh, it's an old book. It's from like the 60s, but it's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, when you check, I don't know, like especially with you like knowing so much about like world building.
Useless shit.
Nah, man, it's not useless shit, bro. It's not.
I'm
I'll
just
talk about
messing around.
like when you like world build with like with Ghost Planet. Like I think this for the most part is an original idea, Rebel Moon, and I think like that's where it's gonna get met with like 50-50. You're gonna people, especially with Zach in general right now. I think people either love him or they hate him, and it being on Netflix is like a way for it's kind of a move for him to just kind of put something out there. Well, he did that zombie movie for them too, I think, but um
I didn't see that.
the one that had Dave Batista in it and some other people. They
Oh.
were like in
I
Vegas, maybe.
Yeah, I am aware of it,
It,
but I have not seen it.
yeah, I forget. Army of the Dead or something like that. I don't know. Anyways,
Uh,
yeah, man, I don't know. It's just gonna be interesting to see how that performs and how it's taken because
can I be honest with you?
yeah,
I'm already not hearing great things about that. I don't know
yeah, me
anything about
too.
the show. I'm already hearing not great things though.
It's weird, man. Like it's like that's what I'm saying. Like even some of the most popular things over the past couple of years have come from like somewhere else. Like I would say Stranger Things is something that's pretty original and I don't even like really vibe with it as much. I should. There's a lot of things in there that I should. I just not have watched that show. Like I think I've
Yeah.
watched a majority of season 1, but that's something that's just kind of come out of the blue. But I also like, dude, I've been getting right back into anime and just checking
It's a
out
lot of people these days.
but like I
Western media is losing people in a lot of different
I think
directions.
it's because of the risk and the originality and the weirdness and the randomness sometimes. And some of this, sometimes it's like the Fallout Boy titles where it's like, hey, I was reincarnated as like a lamp in
Like a
my teacher's
slime,
office.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what?
The devil is a part-timer.
Yeah, just stuff like that. But like you watch it and
Original ideas, wacky ideas, left field ideas.
yeah, I like that. Like I feel like we, as much as
I've said forever that as someone who has played a ton of those MMORPG games, who's met a lot of friends through that, and who has a lot of love for that type of gaming, that first season of Sword Art Online, I can't speak for the rest of the show. It goes weird places I don't condone, but that first season, peak for like an MMO enjoyer, and anime did that. It just nailed that feeling of adventure when you're in that new world with all those people. And I love it for that. And that's anime, man. Sometimes anime just knocks it out of the park in a way nothing else does.
well, even stuff like today, like I watch and I compare it to the things that I grew up with, and I just go like, wow, man, kind of wipes. Like I think anime has evolved as far as storytelling and pacing, and obviously animation. Like Jujutsu Kaisen is something that I am just in awe of right now. Like we're watching season 2, and I'm just like every episode has just been insanely incredible, and but I've
I
also
hear a
like
lot about it, but I haven't started that one yet.
I hold back these reactions because I know the feeling of being on the other side, man. But damn it, Kenny, I need you to watch it, dude. I need you to watch it for me, please.
But that's behind a Demon Slayer because I'm behind on Demon
Nah, man,
Slayer.
screw Demon Slayer. Like,
Oh wow.
put that on the shelf. Go
Oh
get
wow.
your, yeah,
Okay.
dude. I, I think, trust me, this is one of those things, dude. If you think I know you to any degree, like the things that we like, the things that we appreciate from like these kinds of mediums, music, art style, story, world building, all this stuff, dude, you would absolutely, you would love it. You would love it. I
That is
look
a high
forward.
recommendation.
It is, man. It's probably one of the highest. But I will say, like IGN kind of got it right, dude, when it came to something as unique as like Vinland Saga. Season 2 was like anime of the year for them, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I don't know if you mess with that, dude. That was
I've seen the first season of Vinland. I thought it was great.
season 2 is so like not what you would expect, but then
Is
you
it not
go,
good? Don't tell me
oh,
that.
it's no, it's great. It's
Okay,
fan
okay,
fucking
good.
tastic, dude.
Because you
It's
know what Vinland Saga is to at least to me, right?
what is it?
And that's the second coming of Berserk.
Oh, ooh, yeah, yeah.
So I hope it does.
It's good.
I hope it just keeps doing well.
It's so different. It's so slow. But if you just like appreciate storytelling and like the themes and just good
Oh, I do for
like
sure.
those things, like if you can
Yeah,
watch something and enjoy that, like I've actually started going back and watching noir detective films, like radio dramas. I've been getting into like old radio again, and then also listening or watching like old samurai films and old like foreign films and that. Like I'm kind of going through my hipster stage where I'm just like,
that's
yeah, I
cool.
think I'm gonna go get me a record player and start. But no, I
Dude, I tell you, our generation is all doing that because and this is because I'm kind of trying to I'm trying to spend next year breaking into the YouTube side of the platform as well.
okay,
And I think my angle in that is going to have to be with a lot of these niche. I've spent most of the year hanging around in the comment sections of these niche communities of the games that I play.
yeah.
And I've sort of in a small way given Ghost Planet a little. I know at least a couple of people know me as one of a quote unquote WoW hate boomer. So at least I got that going for me.
Look, man,
Known for, you
well,
know,
hey, I mean, look, man, I gotta say, without going into detail, there's been some episode ideas that you've like tossed around with me, and I'm not gonna say anything about what those are about, but you were kind of like weighing it out, like I don't know, man, like it might be so different from, I don't know if people would like it, and I
for
gotta
sure.
say, dude, like, but that's the kind of like the whole theme of what I've been saying here lately is just like, I think a lot of people are craving that, and as long as you're passionate about it, which I know you are, like I say go for it. I say come out of left field with something like about a topic that would throw people off completely.
I agree.
I
I
think that would
agree.
be so fun, man.
The first thing I'm gonna try to do, and I right now I'm trying to make sure I get an episode of the Page podcast out a month because people seem to really like that direction. What I love more than anything is that we actually have a good number of people who will comment on that and say good job. Like I saw a lot of the guys who just you can just look at their profile picture and tell they love punk music. You can see the piercings and everything. You're like, oh yeah, this guy likes this stuff. A lot of those people really enjoyed Punk and Spice, and I'm like, well, good. That that's exactly who the target was for that. And so they'll come an episode that's majorly hip hop focused, things like that, etc. But I sort of want to do these little mini episodes that are like an hour long and not 2 hours long, and they're very very focused on something left field, like
Oh, that's cool.
like a Guild Wars episode. No one inherently is going to be interested in it, but what I hope is that my passion for the series and whoever I'm interviewing's passion for that series will carry. That it'll be two guys or maybe just me talking about something that they're clearly very passionate about, and hopefully that will be interesting enough on its own to get people in and want to hear more. So cause yeah, I'd love to do that. With the YouTube stuff, I was gonna kind of see if you'd help me out a little bit anyway, just because I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah, man, I'm still trying to figure it out, but I would love to, man. I mean, I really think that there's a place for the things that you want to talk about there, and I think that the thing that I've appreciated the most about YouTube as a platform it's just like the search engine optimization, bro. Like, I mean, the way people discover things, I think it's easier for people to stumble upon things, certain topics there than they would a podcast or um, many other things from time to time, other outside of social media. But yeah, dude, I mean, I think that there's just like some unique topics that would be fun. And it's like I told you at the beginning of this episode, man, talking about Lore Runner and him talking about Star Trek. I have never sat down to just watch Star Trek, and then all of a sudden, like I watched all the movies, I started watching some of the shows, I got into Strange New Worlds, and I was listening to his podcast or his, well, it's basically a YouTube slash podcast series, but of him reviewing these episodes and giving his thoughts, and he was just, you could tell that he was just into it and passionate and knowledgeable, and I'm like, that's where I'm willing, if it's at least in my wheelhouse most of the time, I will, if somebody wants to sit down and talk to me about this book or this game or album or something that I've never even like heard of, but hey, I know what you like, or if you like this, then I got you. I can connect these dots and let me geek out, and maybe that will sell it. I mean, I think
Yeah, for sure.
people long for that feeling, man. when you've
And
heard
it's in the presentation too.
it, very much is in the presentation and how you deliver it and how you know how to like create common ground and create bridges between like, hey, you may not know this property or this thing or never tried an anime or never tried this type of music, but here, man, like let me walk
Yeah.
you into it. But man, there's nothing like the time you heard your favorite song or watched your favorite movie and that feeling, that impact, that influence. And that's kind of ties into what we brought up earlier in the episode too, is just like that stuff matters, man. Music, I think the reason why we enjoy it so much, I know between me and you, is just the impact that it has on our lives as far as like a soundtrack, going to
Yeah.
work, listening to when you're working on stuff or like going on a walk or, just it hypes you up, it calms you down. It's just like that kind of influence. And
And especially since the two of us work in audio, I feel like it's very inspirational. Like
yeah,
so much of it, I've the one thing I've been most proud of with GP is that people tell me it has a vibe about it. That's good. I'm so glad that it has a sort of consistent vibe to it. That's
mhm,
that's one of the only things I could hope for is that it wouldn't sound like an eclectic mess, but that vibe comes from music and from really enjoying music and the way artists put their projects together. And you know it's it's beautiful. Music's a beautiful thing, man.
mhm. Yeah, man. And it just makes me excited to dive into different things. Like I've been listening to like just like we were talking about Spotify, man. Like there are moments, like there are things about physical media that I'm trying to get back into with certain things, especially music. I mean, I think Spotify has made it just
So easy.
so easy to just find music, play music, not have to go. Like I can't tell you the last time I bought a
Be
CD.
recommended music.
Yeah, be exactly that, those algorithms. And I have a
Yes,
playlist that I am very picky because I know that if I put this song that it could like generate like, well, since you like this, here we go. And if I do it the right way, like the hit ratio is really nice.
that's true. The hit ratio be really high.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh yeah, this is it. You
Like
know
you
what
know
I'm
what else
talking about.
there. I'm telling you, man, those algorithms are getting good. You'll have a playlist on and you'll start skipping some songs and not others, and it'll
Mhm.
get what mood you're in.
Exactly. It's so
And
weird.
it's really smart because I know sometimes if I skip too many songs, it'll play something I've been listening to for 20 years. I'm like, all right, that's cheating.
That's
That's
cheating.
cheating.
No.
If you're gonna play a song, I've been. It's like you've played this a million billion times, so it'll go right to that because it knows it messed up. But it's really smart algorithm, man. So
Um.
Spotify will wake you up out of a dead sleep and go, "Hey, look, this new album from Travis Scott is out. You might like it."
Yeah.
And you're like,
That's
"Shit, that dropped. I guess I'd better."
it's just different how we digest music and how we are introduced to music now and just different things. Like it's really cool when you come across a podcast or an anime or a book or there's just like my girlfriend, she's reading that series The Fourth Wing, and she got into that, and that's become very, she's like, she can't recommend that enough. She's like really into it. It just dropped
Hmm.
a second book, but just that feeling, dude, of finding that next thing. I think sometimes we try to hold on so hard to the things that we've enjoyed. That's why, like today, I can confidently say, like, yeah, I will always love Star Wars, and I can never like erase the memories, the moments, the things that it brought me joy, and all the stuff. The times I was really into it, but I can be okay with just not being into what they're doing now. I know it's continuing, it's still being expanded upon,
It is
but
still being
maybe
expanded upon.
this is my time to get into something different, like a Star Trek that's familiar, that's still in that wheelhouse, but like it's different, and there's a whole
Oh,
new
oh,
universe to explore and learn about, and
I was
that's
gonna say
okay.
there's as much Star Trek as you could hope to consume.
Exactly. So, but instead of just like hoping and shaking that old thing to saying, do the thing that I like, what are you going to do that thing again? And it's like, dude, maybe that was, I'm a one hit pony. Like maybe that was that time in your life where your interests and what I was making, they collided and they synced up perfectly, but that's just not where we are anymore. You've grown and changed. We've grown and changed.
I got two hot takes here, and they're spicy. They're hot tamale. One of them is unrelated, so I'll say it first. Digimon has done more with the last 20 years than Pokemon has, and deserves more hype because of it.
I don't know if you can. No, I probably can't see on my phone. A little bit.
I see
The
some Digimon. I
kids.
see Agumon.
Yeah, the kids. I have a VCR TV, a little 13-inch little white TV with the VCR, and I have the Digimon movie, and I've been playing that for
Okay.
them
Hey,
lately.
listen, Digimon has done cooler things with the time than Pokemon has. Pokemon has done very little as a series to progress from
I
what it was when we
agree.
were kids. Very little. And you know what else has done that? Star Wars. And you know what else? Here's the second comparison. Star Trek has become cooler and better just outright than Star Wars is. Star Wars had three amazing, undeniably great films. Then it had three more films, which people are kind of 50-50 on. I think everyone generally agrees Revenge of the Sith was really good. I think Clone Wars is kind of divisive. I think Phantom Menace is the most divisive. That's kind of 50-50 on some of those, you know? Some people love them, some people don't. These ones that have come out recently, we're doing the whole prequel thing again. So it's like no one can agree for like the last 20 years on how good Star Wars is or isn't. It's been a long time since everyone agreed Star Wars was great.
Well, to what you just said, and I feel like it would just not be fair if we didn't like at some point before this episode ended, at least touched on this like briefly at least. This kind of like is connected, but Dragon Ball, man, like the direction that they want to go on just kind of feels like, dude, we've been there to some degree. Why are we going there again? Especially when that was not something that people were like really
Exactly.
like. Why are you like self sabotaging your shit, dude? Like, are you?
I'll give you a third spicy take. Dragon Ball Super should have been a series of films.
Yeah, and stayed that way. That would have been
Has
great.
stayed that way, exactly.
Like,
Because the films are great. Actually, when you sit back,
well, yeah, I guess there's some that I haven't like. I haven't watched Battle of the Gods in a long time, and I haven't watched.
I've watched it semi recently. If you just take it as like if you watch Battle of Gods knowing you have two or three other movies to
Mhm.
watch, it's not as bad as some people remember. And
Okay,
there are some hype moments like when Goku goes, "I won't let you destroy my world,"
and he's
and it breaks out from underground. Okay, moments like that are pretty cool with the song going off as they're fighting through the atmosphere. Some moments of that are still pretty hype. It's not the best one, you're right. But then you have Resurrection of F, which was pretty cool, man. And then you have Broly, which is probably just the best DBZ movie we've maybe ever had.
yeah,
So
but
I
like,
feel
aren't
like
those recycling? Like, aren't they like in inherently besides Battle of the Gods? Resurrection F is bringing back Frieza. We've done that. We've done that actually a couple times now. Then you talk about Brawly. Well, we've had what, 3 Brawly movies
oh, it's
before,
recycling.
and then even the
It's
superhero one is like, hey, look, Gohan and Piccolo. I'm glad Piccolo. I don't know
yeah,
if
yeah,
you
yeah.
seen that one. Have you seen the latest?
I have had it spoiled for me because I wasn't able to see it, so don't worry.
Dang it.
I know about Orange Piccolo, I know about Gohan Beast, I know about all the stuff.
And you know about the Cell
Yeah, I know about Cell Max, I know
and the
about Gamma 1 and
androids.
Gamma
And
2. Yeah.
yeah, see, and I love Red Ribbon Army and shit. And I love the android stuff, but I was also kind of
I
like,
don't like how they can just keep making characters that are as strong as these other. The power scaling is so busted
it's
right now.
is it beyond repair though? Like, do you think
And
that's why they're going back
it
to kids? They're like, yo, we're gonna have to.
yes, literally yes, everything that is what's going on. Because they can't fix it now. Gamma 1 and 2 are apparently Super Saiyan Blue level. What is that? How can Red Ribbon do that? Why can they do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Why?
Come on.
Why? Because they're
Like
smart.
they just okay, so you're literally telling me that they just made androids as strong as gods. What is
I
that?
mean,
Come
was it
on.
Android 18 and 17 the same? Like
Not really.
there's
I
a
mean,
whole
androids
timeline where they just nobody stopped them. They
that's
killed
true, but
everybody.
like they went city by city blowing up buildings and cars and people at a time and stuff like that. Like they didn't blow the planet up like Cell was going to do.
Well, because
Gamma 1 and 2 are so much stronger than the Cell that was going to blow up the planet. Leagues stronger
they're
than
stronger
that.
than Boo, right?
They're stronger than Boo. They are tons of times stronger than those characters. How did Red Ribbon make that? How did they do that?
I don't know.
I don't know, Lucas.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, just because, so we could see it. And
Exactly. I think we just need to accept that sometimes, you know what? I love Dragon Ball Z as much as the next person. I was sitting right there on my couch in the 90s and 2000s watching it just like you and everyone else in our generation. I've sat there for Dragon Ball GT. I streamed Dragon Ball Super. Akira Toriyama just is not
what is it, bro? Like,
he's
because I
not
don't
all that, man.
I don't think
He's
it's
just
that
not
he
all that.
doesn't care, but I also don't know if he
You know what? I'm gonna
what
keep it real with you. He kind of doesn't care.
you think he
I have
why?
literally read interviews. I've read interviews where he said he forgets like things like
Well,
who died in the Cell Saga,
okay, so
which doesn't make any sense because Dragon Ball Z is one of the biggest IPs in the world. It makes him millions and millions and millions of dollars. And if you or me had created anything that got anywhere near that big, we would tattoo the details of it on the inside of our eyelids so we would never forget it again. And he can't remember things like who died in the Cell Saga.
well, okay, have you ever seen people like try to quiz George Lucas and he's just like, fuck off,
That's
dude.
shitty too.
He's like, dude, stop asking. I don't
Star
know.
Wars has made him billions of
Uh,
dollars. It's his business to know these
but
things.
maybe he stops and says he gets to a point where he's just like, guys, it's not real.
I feel like yes, they get there, but
Like,
for me as a creator who does world building, gross.
I mean, I get it,
Gross.
but it's like an actor. If somebody keeps going up to him and goes, "Hey," like Harrison Ford, it's Han Solo. He's like, that's just a character, right? Like, that's not me.
That's true, but you know what I think about? I forget his name and I wish I could remember it because it's a disservice that I don't remember. The guy who made Cyberpunk Red and Cyberpunk that game was based off of, he's an African American. I've watched many interviews with him leading up to that game's launch because he was launching Cyberpunk Red, which I think was his new tabletop at the time.
Cool.
That man, like me, has that entire setting walking around in his head. And any question you ask him, from the law to the codes of the law, he is ready to sit down and chew your ear off about. And he is nowhere near as successful, not even in the same universe as George Lucas or Akira Toriyama. Akira Toriyama, and I said this on the show, is a man who has admitted in editorials that he is a gag manga writer and he wants to make jokes. He doesn't like all this power level shit. He doesn't like Vegeta, okay? And he's tired of us asking to let him win fights. He doesn't like him. He wants to make jokes about poop and things shaped like poop.
Okay.
So this all this derivative stuff is literally him being him, man.
But do you think that that somebody above him, some guy in a suit, is telling him like you can't just like move forward and do like a Goten Trunks, and they're young, but we won't have Goku and Vegeta so much as the main character. Do you think Dragon Ball could ever make something without Goku and Vegeta?
I think they could, but he would never do that.
I mean, this last movie was like, yeah, they're training up here with Brawly. They're not the main focus, and it still did pretty well. People still were like, "Go on, yay!"
I think we could. I think we would definitely like it. I think we would. He could do a movie where it's just a Piccolo movie, and we'd like it.
I think so.
But I don't think. Akira Toriyama doesn't have as much. He's not as directly involved with this stuff as he used to be, even right now. He's still doing things like sending designs and basic plot outlines to people who then do everything else. So there's really no telling with these super movies. We know to varying degrees, but we don't know for sure just how much he was involved in this stuff.
Right.
I'm talking about the stuff he makes. And so Daima is something he's got his fingers in. And it reeks of him. The plot and the premise reeks of Toriyama.
What was the pitch? What do you think the pitch was, man?
I think the pitch was they're kids again, so I can go back to writing lighthearted, fun gag stuff, which is what he has said he wants to do all along. I think an uncomfortable truth we have to face is that some of Akira Toriyama's best work came despite of him. Because we know for a fact, all through the Cell Saga, he wanted to end it way before it would have been good. He wanted Jiro and Android 19 to be the final bosses before his editor said no. He wanted 17 and 18 to be the final bosses before his editor said no. He wanted Imperfect Cell to be the final boss. No. Second Form Cell. No. Third Form Cell was when he finally got it right and his editor said, cool, you can end the arc. If none of that would have happened, would we even love it like we do? If it would have ended with Jiro and 19, I think Toriyama has been pushed to greatness. And I said this too. I think he's like the Michael Jordan of manga, man, because he made Dragon Ball. And as I went over in my show, Dragon Ball is an amazing adaptation of Journey to the West. It is a faithful and thorough adaptation in a lot of ways. He gets credit for that. Dragon Ball Z, for all its ups and downs, legendary series. Influenced so many of our favorite things we couldn't even begin to count, right? He gets credit for that. He two-peated. He Michael Jordan two-peated there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But man, everything after this, Lucas, everything after those two, I don't. You know what I mean? Like I think the Broly movie was like the best thing Dragon Ball has done in like a long time, man. My dad liked the Broly movie.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's nonstop, and it just is like,
The colors, the action, the hype music.
But after like the spotty animation from Super and just some of the ideas that was presented, it was just like, I think that's always going to happen though with any property, is that once you get invested, like you're like, there's so much potential here. Like, I mean, like I could go on about My Hero right now. I'm just like, oh gosh.
Has that swung back in the other direction? Because last time we talked, I was like,
no, not for real, man. I think honestly,
because last time we talked, I said that I feel like we've had My Hero long enough now that I have looked at Japan's version of superheroes in the style that we do them, which is what I feel like My Hero is, and I'm like, nah, I'm good.
It's I think like, dude, I think that was also something where the creator wanted to wrap it up sooner than, people wanted him to, because it's making money, it's popular, and there's so much you could do with it. Honestly, it had a spin-off, and
really.
But with that being said, I can tell through what he was putting through there that he wanted to expand and do other things. And I think that's just like the creative struggle. Is like you said, you have something that takes off and blows up, goes viral, or just whatever, and people grow to expect that, and then you're trapped in it. And even though it's not that you hate the thing, you like, that's your baby, you made that, but you also want to let that baby grow up and move out so that you can go and do other things. And
for sure.
So I don't know. I think there's understanding that is forgotten as us as readers or consumers when it comes to some of this stuff. But it also is just like out of their control. Like they're like they poke Akira Toriyama with the stick and go like, keep doing it. And he's like, man, I'm dude, I told y'all years ago, I'm done.
Literally. And we have,
all right, they're kids again. All right, cool. Like, are you happy now? Fucking go. Leave me alone.
Like that. I mean, we have to wake up and realize there's a reason that man at this point just sends in notes and character doodles, man.
Just like, oh fuck, I gotta do this.
Literally, if he really cared, he would be in that room.
Do you think George is feeling away with Disney now? Like, I know that's been an ongoing conversation, but do you really think he likes the direction?
No, I've because I don't know. I've spent the year really plugged into this stuff but even before I returned to podcasting, I was getting the itch,
Mm-hmm.
So I started plugging into different things, and I've always just been interested in film and filmmakers because I had an acting period, right? That was another phase. So I had a period where I wanted to do all this stuff too. And I've seen interviews with Lucas semi-recently where he's just got complete buyer's remorse or seller's remorse, you could say. He literally is like, I gave them like a note of things they could have done that would have at least fit the canon, and they acted like they were going to do some of that. And they have done none of that, absolutely. And
they
he's
have
like,
no direction now.
They have no direction. He's like, they have taken it so far away from that thing that I said they could do, they can't even get back to it now. And my thing is like, listen, man, I'm a Trekkie anyway. Welcome to the good shit. Because what's cool is you listed a bunch of Star Treks and you didn't even list one of my personal favorites, which means I can recommend it to you. That's how deep Trek is. One of my personal favorite runs of that show, I don't think you've watched, and I think you'd enjoy. And that's Voyager, Star Trek Voyager. No, not Voyager. The one with Burt Bacala from Quantum Leap.
Deep Space Nine?
No. That's with Cisco. Okay. And he's on the Deep Space Nine space station. The one I'm talking about is a prequel series from before. It's when they're first meeting the Vulcans. It stars Burt Bacala. If you just look up Star Trek Burt Bacala, you'll see the one.
I'll look it up.
I just can't remember the little subtitle because they all have different ones. But yeah, I think Trek has just been a lot more solid a lot longer. And for me in Star Wars, man, like,
I think it is Voyager.
It was it? Okay. Well, I don't think Voyager's the one with Voyager's the one with Captain Janeway.
Is it a series?
Yeah, it's a series. Like I said, I know it stars Burt Bacala, and I'm trying to think of the lady who plays his Spock, basically.
You got The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery.
Enterprise.
Is there we Enterprise?
Go. Enterprise.
Okay.
Yep. And so canonically in the timeline, that's like the first series. That is before Spock. That is before McCoy. That's before all of them.
Yeah, isn't
And
this
it is
shortly after they've started to explore space?
exactly. It's very early on, but what I think you would appreciate it about it is they have a lot of cool archetypes you don't see in Star and a lot of the other Star Treks. Like in the original series, you get like like an Irish character, sometimes things like that. But in Enterprise, you get characters that are like from Nebraska and from like North Carolina, and they have accents from like you recognize. You're like, I know a guy that sounds like that, and a couple of those guys are in cool roles. Like one of my favorite episodes of that series right there is when two of the main characters who hate each other get stranded on an away ship and they're running out of oxygen, and they just have a bottle of liquor, and they don't know it, but the team is working to get them back. But they everything that they have shows them they're going to run out of oxygen before that happens. So these two men hate each other, and I think they've had a mission not that long ago that really pushed that hate to new levels. And they just over the course of the episode, it's just these two dudes from different walks of life. I think one of them is British, and I think one of them is from like Austin, Texas. And they just hash out their differences over a bottle of liquor, and they think they're gonna die. They think this is it. They're like, I have found myself stranded in the middle of the galaxy with this jagoff, and I got this bottle of liquor, so I'm gonna make peace with him. And what it is, man, is it's just what Star Trek does so damn well. It's a story about people and the relationships they have. And it doesn't matter if you have blue skin, green skin, purple. Everyone is just a soul making their way through this world. And these two men end up on this thing, and they think they're dying, and they just connect with one another, and they're friends by the end of it. And I'm gonna spoil it, but there's so many episodes. They get rescued in time, and they're good friends after that. And they had so much tension on the show prior to that point, and they just really did not care for each other at all. And after that, they're very fast friends, and they care about each other. And it happened so organically because they really thought they were going to die, man. Like they were like, listen, I'm going to tell you all my secrets because what does it matter? I'm gonna,
Yeah, about to die.
I'm gonna suffocate in here tomorrow at 3 p.m. You know that submarine that went underwater?
Oh yeah.
It was literally that situation, but in space.
Oh, that would be terrifying.
It was my favorite. It was my favorite episode of Enterprise. I recommend that one. It's good.
Man,
But yeah.
what just because we're talking about it, I don't think we really have ever talked about Star Trek, but like real quick,
I would have remembered.
I know, man, and I'm gonna have to watch some of these some more, and definitely like maybe we can pick back up on some other.
I'll definitely do a Star Trek episode for sure. I can bring you on,
That might
and
be
by
fun.
that point, maybe everyone's got a personal favorite,
Yeah.
whichever one that happens to be.
How, in what ways has Star Trek influenced Ghost Planet?
Oh God, oh man, there's only one.
Like, what's the
One
standout thing?
Sure. Well, there's only one series that influenced it more, and that's Shadowrun. But Star Trek taught me to think about the minutia of your setting because it may not come up in this or that. Like during the early years of the platform, right? When it was mostly just artwork and things like that coming out here or there, and only the most diehard fans who were following me on all platforms were keeping up with any type of a story. But like Dark Souls and games like that I love, over the years, I started expanding how I was telling the story. And now there are quite a few people that know what's going on. And because we've spent the year putting out novels and whatnot, now people know what's really going on to a deeper level. And at that point, the influence from Star Trek was a necessity because I'm so deep into the setting now that I'm telling stories about 20 years ago in the timeline and getting into the specifics of the technology then. And I have to keep track of the differences between the 20-year difference of my world and where the technology was at those two different points. Because at several points in those novels, I'm describing the fashion of that year, what cars people are driving, that there's trash on the streets because there's a garbage strike. I have to remember those things. And what Star Trek will teach you is they will take a whole universe and pack it into one episode. They'll go to a planet for an episode and you'll learn more about that planet than you ever wanted to know. And then they'll leave it and never go back. And they'll do that every episode of a whole season because the people, Gene Roddenberry, and he tried to make sure that anyone else who worked on Star Trek, those actors take it extremely seriously. Like what's his name? Patrick. God, why am I blanking on Picard's
Stewart?
actor's name? Yeah. He all of the old Star Trek actors go to each new Star Trek casting show and like give it good luck. Like they bless it. Like during Deep Space Nine, apparently, when that filming wasn't going very well, um, uh, like Patrick Stewart and all of them would go and like put on performances for the cast and crew to raise their spirits, because Star Trek is a legacy. They take it extremely seriously. There are scientists in NASA right now who, if you go look up their bio somewhere, they wrote in that bio themselves that they're trying to make Star Trek real, and it's because the consistency of the technology and the way they've thought it out makes so much sense, as much as it can under the circumstances, right? And it sort of creates a blueprint of, if you're making a world, these are the questions you have to ask yourself, because even if they don't seem important, they are fundamental building blocks. They're glue. This is going to come up. If you have spaceships, how does your faster than light travel work? You may not need to answer that question today or in a short story you're writing tomorrow. But in 3 years, when you're wanting to make big stories, people are going to, when people start really paying attention to what you're making, there are going to be people in those comment sections going, well, how the hell did that happen? And if you don't know the answer, eh, it's like a house of cards. You pull one out, and before you know it, the whole thing topples down. So Star Trek influenced it majorly. It taught me that you have to think about these little things. You have to think about how the technology would vary from time period to time period, or how different alien cultures would interact. I'll give you a cool piece of Star Trek thing that doesn't get talked about anymore, and it's why most of the aliens just look like people with different stuff on their face. And the obvious reason is, it's more cost effective that way to just have it be people with masks and paint on. But it's actually based on a thing. I'm going to forget the name of the guy, but it's a law of planetary development, where that in Star Trek and in my universe as well, same principle, that the type of life that flourishes to the point that they would have an intelligent species capable of space travel looks like you and me universally. That's why all of us kind of look like bipedal walking around things, because that is what this stage of life looks like across everything universally. We may be different colors and have different vestigial, face tentacle doodlies, but yeah, we all follow the same law of planetary development, and it's why we have two arms and two legs. It's why all the Star Trek aliens look like that. And you got to think about stuff like that. And that's what Star Trek taught me, man. And that's why I balk at like Akira Toriyama and people who forget stuff about their setting. It's like, man, what are you doing? If I were you, if I were you, I said it on my show. I'm like, you think I forget stuff like that? I know how there's a device called a mood stabilizer that exists like 20 years in my canon, which pours different chemicals together to elicit different reactions in your brain and get you to different moods: happy, sad, pensive, anxious. It's just a specific combination of chemicals that when you ingest it, it puts you into that mood chemically. I had to make up how that machine worked, what it sounded like, how you operated it, and all of that while making it an homage to the mood organ from the novelization of Blade Runner, Do Cyborgs Dream of Electric Sheep, because I love Philip K. Dick, and it had to be close to that, but not the same. And all of that is 20 years ago. That's how you got to think about it, man. That's how I think about it anyway.
The attention to detail, man, is definitely important. It's almost intimidating sometimes. I'm sure it has to be,
Yes,
bro.
sir.
Like it's overwhelming sometimes as you expand and as you try to connect the dots and stuff, man.
Right.
But you've been able to do
like
it.
6 years of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I have nothing but the most respect for anybody who can build a world or craft a story, or make a character that feels like a real person or anything like that. Like anything that can be relatable and can impact you and touch you, whether it's music, whether it's story, whether it's anything like that, man. I mean, and I feel like that's why we have such a deep passion for these things that we end up talking about. And I think about this episode was just kind of like at the beginning, I told you, I was like, we're just going to talk, man. We're just going to, whatever that train of thought takes us, we'll go. But I know that it'll always lead us like through a trail of passions and things that we we enjoy and we geek out about, we're passionate about, and it's such a wide spectrum, but like there's ways to always place how they play a part with each other, or play together. I mean, and so man, this has been incredibly deeper into a lot of the things that I wasn't sure if we were gonna touch on, and I'm glad that we did, man. And I think we always walk away from an episode where we're like, damn, there's still like a lot of things probably.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we're
go.
always leaving stuff on the table, but
I know.
that's just, we can talk about that on my show.
Oh well, dude, I look forward to it so much, man. And speaking of looking forward to, at the time of this recording, we're like in mid-December 2023, and I think it would only be fitting to close the episode by asking you, like, what are some of your goals with Ghost Planet going into 2024, and what are some of the things that people can look forward to, and also we'd like to just let everyone know how to get in touch with you, get into Ghost Planet content, everything, podcasts, YouTube, anything that you got going on here, upcoming, currently. And that I'll of course put all this down in the description, but just to let you kind of talk about it, and then we'll wrap it up, man.
Okay, well, most people on Ghost Planet at this point know me as Admin Frost, and I am the host with the most, a digital ghost who brings Phantom Fever to your transceiver. Ghost Planet is a couple of things at this point. Randomly, it's a Facebook page that posts memes. I know, right? But hey, that's where our largest concentration of fans are based. And we actually have a really big fandom over there. There are a bunch of great people who've been with us for years. And that is where the Spotify playlist came from. It was built by me and a bunch of people from our fan group over there. It's a really popular playlist, and we love it. We've really become a nice fandom. And there's also the podcast, obviously, Ghost Planet Studios on iTunes and Spotify and Apple Music. That's been doing very well. Recently, the Page Podcast is a brand new show I've started as a direct result of what fans wanted to see over there. It goes off of their topics and polls that they vote on, and that has seemed to turn out into a very interesting show. It also has full songs and licensed music, which I think has given it a bit of a different vibe. And I hope people enjoy it. I hope people go look it up. As far as my plans for next year, it's going to be an ambitious year. This year, I experimented with a lot of, as I said, putting out long-form written e-novels about Ghost Planet that went into a variety of things. There was only one or two places to experience those, but I'm kind of a weird creator in that a lot of the things I enjoyed, like Dark Souls, kind of require you to dig for the good bits, and I'm stubbornly into things like that. So some stuff gets released somewhere. Next year, I would like to take a lot of those written stories and put them into audio format so that people who stumble upon the show can enjoy them, as well as make a proper move to YouTube and branch off into more traditional stuff like reviewing different video games, talking about different movies and music, as well as doing some game streaming. There are a lot of sort of weird games that I like that I'd like to cover, and I think I'm going to try to move into doing some of that on YouTube next year, in addition to a few other things.
Well, man, another episode down, dude. I don't know how many we've ever recorded together via, on WNDRSOUL, or
we're at least 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah, somewhere definitely in that wheelhouse, man. But it's always a good time, man, and it's always fun to catch up, and I'm sure we'll work out some stuff like where we can connect and talk again as soon as next year, because it's all, man, it's just a wild time, dude. It's fun to kind of reflect, look at things, and I know that we always get on here and we just start catching up and we just go on tangents and go from there, man. But I enjoy it every time, man. So I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, man. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for listening to another episode of WNDRSOUL. Connect with WNDRSOUL by following the podcast on social media. If you would like to support WNDRSOUL, please rate, review, and share the podcast and this episode. Until the next time we meet, goodbye.
WNDRSOUL. WNDRSOUL.
WNDRSOUL.